Okay, so recording is on. So let me create day 47. Now, terminal, cd desktop, cd Angular. What's the project name? Web dev Angular. Web dev Angular and cd day 47. Correct? Angular. And here Angular CLI. So first we need to install the Angular CLI. Remember that this is a node package. Google have created the node package, and /g over here means globally on your machine. First we need to install the package globally.
So if it does not specify G, then what will happen?
Local. You cannot use that command in your command prompt. In short,
Which command?
yeah, you'll get to know. No, there is one command called as ng. Now presently if you see,
Okay.
there is a ng. I have installed Angular on my machine, that's why it is accessible in this way. But if you want to use ng in any of the command prompt, you need to install any package. You need to install your this which package? At Angular CLI package.
Okay.
At Angular CLI package globally. Okay, see now. First I need to change NVM. You don't need to do this thing. 18. Okay, now I'm installing this package globally. npm install /g at Angular CLI. Okay, node package have been installed. Command line interface. The Angular CLI is command line interface tool that is used to initialize, develop, scaffold, and maintain the Angular applications directly from your command shell. Right? Day 47. We are in a day 47. The package have been installed. Let's clear it. Now I want to create a new Angular project. See what is happening. Google have written a package. That's a node package. They have created a node package. So use this node package name is as ng. This ng is used to create the Angular structure. The ng package is used to create the Angular structure. So npm.js, if you go over here at Angular CLI, if you see, can you see this is developed by CLI for Angular, and Angular team have created this package. Can you see collaborators, Angular and Google? And we know this package can be installed locally, npm I at Angular CLI, or we can use /g to install any node package globally. Once you install this at Angular CLI, you get access. See here, to invoke the tool command line, you need to use the ng executable. There is one executable called as ng. Right? So you can go here, ng. It's a node package, ng executable, which is built inside at Angular CLI package. --help. And you can see it will tell you If this is working, which means that Angular have been added to your system. Now we need to create new project, ng new. I can say ng new. Just create a ng new. Instead of you to create a folders manually, Google says that use this tool that we have already created. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
So ng new and name, here I can say first app. Instead of project, we can say first Angular app. So it is asking you a lot of things. What CSS styling you need to use? So we can say plain CSS. This is what? Plain CSS. We want to use the plain CSS. Hit the enter. Do you want to enable the server side rendering? No. Presently, what is that? We'll see later on. Static site generation, SSG pre-rendering. Let's say no. And can you see automatically it will create this folder structure.
Mm-hmm.
Inside the first app, readme.md file would be created. First app, editor config, git ignore, Angular JSON, package JSON.
Mm-hmm.
All this folder structure would be created by whom? This ng package. Ng is not a package actually. It is the executable available inside. Actual package name is this. Add Angular CLI. This is actual package name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let us see.
Mm-hmm.
It is installing or what? Yeah, completed. The directory is already under the version control. We're saying that this root directory is already under the version control. Can you see first app is a folder?
Yeah.
And inside that, a lot of things. So this is a package.json. This might be familiar to you, right? We know what do you mean by name, what do you mean by scripts, what do you mean by dependencies, what do you mean by dev dependencies,
Mm-hmm.
right? So dependencies, these are the required dependencies. Angular router, forms, core, compiler, common. These are the dev dependencies, which are limit TypeScript. Can you see here? TypeScript. Then readme.md file. Whenever you push this code on the GitHub, this file would be presented to you initially, right?
Mm-hmm.
tsconfig. If you remember about this file, we have created the TypeScript config file. Remember or not?
Yeah.
Means in the command line, we need to give a lot of, in the command line, we need to give, while you run the, while you, where is that file? Web started. Whenever you run the application, you remember when we have studied this?
Yeah, when we run this tsc command, right?
Correct. At that time, it goes to which file? tsconfig file and searches for the flags, different flags that are needed. That is nothing but what your tsconfig file is. Yeah. So this is the, see, these many things are pre-configured by Angular. You don't need to worry about any of these things, right? So, but the intention of this file, these flags can be set at the time of compiling TypeScript to the JavaScript. Instead of you to write in a command, it is a good practice to create the JSON file and put it over here. That is the tsconfig.json. A
So
main,
the only purpose is only that, right?
that is,
Whenever
yeah,
we
compile.
when we compile that
Yeah.
tsc and we give the TypeScript file, so
Correct.
it will look into this file
And
accordingly and convert into the JS.
correct.
Income.
Yeah. So so this file is about that package.json, you know. So new file you will see over here is angular.json. Angular.json is a new file to you, right? And it would be having few, if you see, this is the structure of the file. Schema means the folder structure that you have received. The folder structure that you have received over here is by means of this schema.json. New project root, if you create any of the project, one projects folder would be getting created over here, and inside that a new Angular project would be getting created. We'll talk about this. Can you see, this is your first app. This is the name of your application, first app. Can you see the folder name, first app? And this folder name, can you see project type application? In Angular there are two types of the projects. For now we can understand just two types: application project and the library project. In your, consider that your organization is having a standard table, right? And that table is used in almost every project. So what you will create, you will create an Angular application with the library type, project type as library, so that you can use it in your any of the upcoming projects, right? Source root, where you will find the source codes, src folder. Prefix app, so whenever you create the Angular components, that would be prefixed by this app, and this setting app root is over here, right? So how do you build? That setting is inside this build object. How do you serve? That say that settings are inside over here, that configuration are here. How do you test? That configurations are over here. So technically angular.json file is that file which just contains the architecture of your project. If you look at the build, right? So what would be the index file? Index.html, browser main.ts, output, where exactly you need to generate the build. Dist folder would be getting created. Dist stands for distribution. Inside that, first tab, tsconfig, at the time of compilation, which tsconfig you will use. Yeah, now see here, this is the Angular specific. What Angular guys have done, this is the tsconfig app.json, tsconfig spec.json. So when you say tsconfig app.json, it is same. It is extending to this file tsconfig.json, but specific to the codes that are the part of your source. So there are two levels of the codes Angular has differentiated. So your app source code, app source, and unit test source. So what Angular have done, for actual your app sources, a separate tsconfig file, tsconfig.app, and for this unit test, tsconfig.test. That is the only difference, but both are getting the configuration from tsconfig file. That's what they are saying. So tsconfig.app.json, tsconfig.spec.json. Spec means what? So any specific to the unit test cases, is if there is a difference, you can change it over here, but generally you don't need to change it. But if you see both the files, this app here and the spec over here, both are extending to the same tsconfig file, right?
Can you show that image? Just that unit test.
Unit test.
Yes.
Cleared, right?
do you need to know about that ts config.app? Do you require anything?
Means?
I mean, just like you said, ts config.this
Correct.
same like that.
Yeah,
These other
same.
two files
Yeah, presently you don't need to change it actually. So if you see here, you have included different set of files, and here you have the files are from the source folder in a app config JSON, and in the spec source, whatever files are ending with the spec.ts unit test files, that we are targeting over here. That's the only difference. And if you want to change something, you may need to change in the include array, or if you want to change the output directory, you might change it over here. But technically you never need to touch this file until and unless you are doing something library level, or you are developing something on your own. Okay. So here tsconfig spec, tsconfig, tsconfig app package, package.lock. Package.lock is that file which keeps the track which dependency have been downloaded, right? Which dependency have been downloaded. So what happens is that exact libraries we need to know, right? And exact the URLs. If you see here, you get a full URL, right? Can you see this? From here I have downloaded this, and with this key I have downloaded this. So this also is required for the crucial projects. So whenever you recreate whenever you push it to the Git and type the command npm install to re-download all the dependencies, this file is referred along with the package.json. This file is referred. You will get exact URLs from where to download all these things, right? And with which key you have downloaded, that key is also here. And that's why this file is also important. This file would be auto created once you first time install all the dependencies. By looking at the package.json, this file would be automatically getting created. Okay, now
So, after doing something like we can delete this log file.
we can regenerate it, no problem.
So when it will be generated at that time.
Yeah, see, so this, whenever you push this project, let me push it to Angular project structure. I have pushed this code. If you go to the GitHub, now here you will find there is no node modules folder over here, right?
Right.
If you want to run this project, you need node modules folder, correct?
Correct.
So you will go to so what you will install, you will clone this project first on your machine. And what you will fire, npm install, so that whatever dependencies are mentioned in the package.json, all that would be getting downloaded, provided that it will check the package.log.json also to get the URLs and exact same files.
So whatever dependency that are mentioned in the package.json, that are downloaded from the path provided in the package.log.
Correct. Actually, this thing happens from the package.json, dependencies inside the package.json, right? Over here. But I need an exact file that is on my machine. Same file I need on your machine.
Okay.
So who takes care of that? Package.log.json. So there shouldn't be any discrepancy in my executable and your executable. Right? That is the package.lock.json. Package.json, tsconfig, angular.json. So if you see serve, when you say Angular serve, this is the serve. We have seen the build. Serve means what? On the development environment, I need to run the Angular application. That is the serving. You can production level serving and the development level serving, right? So two separate builds would be getting generated, and by default it's a development. Means whenever you fire the command, I want to run the application, cd first app ng serve. You see, whenever you do this thing, your local server, your application gets deployed on the, it is creating a local HTTP server, and your application gets installed on the local HTTP server, which is nothing but this. Your application is getting installed on the local HTTP server. So at the time of that, this configuration is used. How serve would be happening? Extract I18N. I18N is nothing but what? Internationalization, a different language support. If you want to give, this can help you, or the currencies, this can help. Let's not talk about this right now. And but it is related to that. Test, how unit testing will happen. So this is the architecture. This is the architecture of your Angular project: building, serving, testing. Building, serving, and what? Testing. And how do that things will happen, that is mentioned over here. Okay.
And you said like that um, developer level build an ng server. And what is that deployment part? Can we are we going to learn about that later on?
Yes.
Because I've heard many times there is a build.
Correct.
And particular server you have to provide. So
correct.
Is there a difference while executing a project on a
No, there is no difference. There is no difference. Yeah, go ahead.
So what is the difference? Like I've heard always this thing, we need to provide a build, and what exactly do
Yeah,
in that case?
we'll talk about that. How to generate a build and other things are the later stories, but we'll talk about that. Okay.
So is this the same file?
Same file. That is the same file.
Just
Even you don't need to touch this file. You need to make some changes in other files. We'll see in which files exactly you need to change it. Right? Now let's not go inside the source folder now. So source folder is all about what? The actual source codes you are having. Node modules. So public folder is that folder where you place the things which are publicly available, like favorite icon, fav icon. Node modules, you know what do you mean by node modules? It is the byproduct of the dependencies object in a angular.json. .vs code configuration. .angular, right? In your .angular, even this is not required to know. So these are some things that have been auto created, right? So just a minute. Angular project structure. There is official documentation available on this. This is archived. Okay. Head to angular.dev. Yeah, file structure. So everything whatever I have mentioned, all the things that have given over here, right? Everything is here. If you see, like this, they have given. But here, so here you will see, just a minute. Now, if you see here in the dot Angular, right, there is a cache and 18.0.2. So it is caching some needed files. It is caching some needed files.
Mhm.
So main purpose of this folder is the caching. Is what? Caching. Just a minute. So technically, this folder, the sole purpose of this folder is for caching these things. If you see here, there is some build info. So how exactly things are builded, that things are remembered by this folder. Even this is not needed. Even if you see few dependencies, right, that dependencies are also cached over here. Means you don't need to again and again regenerate it. That's why Google caches these dependencies and place it inside the .angular folder. Actually, you never need to touch this folder. Right? See, something has been pre-compiled and that have been added over here. That have been added over here. So you don't need to worry about this. If you see, Angular core is one of your dependency. If you go here in under the dependencies, can you see Angular core? So this dependency you don't need to recompile again and again. And that's why what Angular does, it places the compiled version into it, because 18 will never change. So these few dependencies will never change. So those dependencies Angular put inside this folder, right? Core architecture level things. Because whenever you are running the Angular application, if you make any change in your app, it is going to reflect it. It is going to recompile the whole application and generate the build. To make that thing faster, Google creates .angular folder. Okay. Hello.
Yeah.
Is it clear?
So, suppose in that case,
Just a minute. Let me show you. So if you go in a app HTML and if you add something, if you add any of the h1 or something like that here, h1, Angular recompiles whole project and then adds this h1 here. See here, then adds this h1 over here. So at this time, Angular avoids regenerating some core libraries, right?
okay.
And that's why it goes to the cache and build those pre-compiled things. That's the purpose of the .angular only.
in case suppose you mentioned here there like or there some version number.
Ah, correct.
So if in case that is changed,
Yeah.
so
But say,
in that case, uh, it need to be, for example, in our case, for example, these are getting changed. Then do we need to regenerate? Means I heard sometime like we have to remove the cache. So is this the same cache?
no, that is the different cache.
Different.
That is the browser cache.
Okay.
So one more thing, this versions and all things are given to you by the ng at Angular CLI. Google says that you shouldn't be worrying about these dependencies because RxJS 7.8.0 is compatible with 18.0.0 that might not be compatible with the earlier version, right? And you need to play a lot with these things, with the compatibility of the dependencies. And by considering this only, Google said that, boss, don't worry about the versions, don't change it manually. Go to the CLI and CLI will take care of all these things, right? And that is the sole purpose of using the CLI. So you will never change these versions manually over here. Otherwise, it is a collapsing and we are losing the purpose of creating or using the CLI. Right? Fine. So VS Code is that folder. Which extensions you would be needing? You can add the extensions. Launch configuration, if you want to change instead of 4200, 4300, something like that, you can change it over here. Tasks, right? So these are specific to the VS Code. Configuration, if you want to run the project and you want a run button, that also you can create, but not needed actually. It's a pretty standard professional thing is given to you by Google, right? You can do a lot of things by using these folders. Fine. If you go inside the source folder, you'll find there is an app folder. If you go inside the app folder, sorry, source folder, there is an app folder, there is an index.html folder, there is a main.ts and the style.css. And what? CSS. You know what do you mean by CSS file, correct? You know what do you mean by TS file? It's a TypeScript file. HTML file, you know what do you mean by that part, correct? Now, what is the flow of the application? When you do something like this, what is happening? Let's inspect the code or view the page source. Under the page source, you will find this is HTML, index.html file. Inside that, here, if you see, there is the style.css have been loaded. And if you look at the scripts, there is something called as main.js. If you open the main.js, main.js is coming from this main.ts. Can you see that? Main.js is coming from which file? Main.ts, which means that first your index.html gets loaded.
We cannot see main.js, right?
We can see the ts file.
No, in this means after convert, it automatically converts into JS code, right?
Correct.
But it is not displaying the folder structure. This JS file.
This is the part. This is what your main.js is. Right. And if you want to see that specifically, if you see, this is the code for the app component.ts. That cannot be understandable.
No, my question is, we cannot see this main dot JS, any TS file present in the Angular project, it is converted into the internally into the JS file, right? But we cannot see that JS file into our folder structure.
Yeah. See, now go to the sources, and here this is the main.js file. The main.js file will look like something this. This concept is called as source map generation. This concept is called as source map generation. Now, if the source maps are there, we can see the thing, but in this form only. Yes, you'll get to know that thing. What do you mean by source map? But see here, the flow understand first index.html would be loaded in the browser. Index.html. From the index.html, you will go inside main.ts. Right? From the index.html, you go to this main.ts file. From the main.ts, you get to know there is something called as this app component. This app component, app config, everything you will see in the main.js file. If you see main.js, there is a reference to the main.ts. Even this app config.ts also, it is there. Then app routes is also there. And here is actually app component.ts, which means that index.html, from the index.html, it will go to the main ts. From main ts, it will go to the app component .ts. App component.ts. Main ts, app component.ts. Okay. So you load the index.html, this one, and then you, from the main ts, you go to the app component.ts. Index.html, main ts, app component. Also, from here it will go to the app config also. It can check the app config also. So this app config file, if you can say export the application config, it's nothing but an object. Okay, this is an array. So how to it gives you two things: change detection strategy, we'll talk about this, and the application router. What it gives? Application router. Just forget about this file right now. Okay, just skip this file right now. But this is a part of the loading. So first it loads index.html. From the index.html, it gets to know there is something called as main.ts. From the main.ts, it gets to know there is something called as app component.ts. App component.ts.
Because of that, Bootstrap application.
Bootstrap application, correct. Bootstrap is this Bootstrap and the Bootstrap 5 are the different things. It has nothing to do with that. So this is just the start application. Start application with this component and this configuration. Start application with this component and this configuration. What is this component? That is, it is nothing but this component. Okay, it is nothing but what? This component. Now, what do you mean by component? What do you mean by the template URL? That's what we are going to learn in the Angular. The main part of the Angular learning is nothing but what? Understanding the meaning of the component. What exactly it does? What do you mean by template URL? What do you mean by style URL? What do you mean by selector? All that things we will see. But tomorrow. Just we discuss the Angular architecture, and core of the Angular will start from tomorrow.
So in the index.html,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
it look for this approved tag.
Approved tag, yeah. What is that? You will get to know tomorrow. Okay. Hello?
Yeah, yes, okay.
Yeah. We'll meet tomorrow.
Yeah. Can you please send me that